Well, it's time for my seemingly annual Derek Carr is good, the Raiders shouldn't move on from him video. I made one last year, I'm making one this year, and I'll probably have to make one next year, just with the way the narrative is. I think Derek Carr is good. Like, take a look at this play, for example. This is a great example of it. So first things first, what you're going to notice on this play, this is before the ball is snapped, you're going to notice that a Houston player is going to move a lot farther in. He's going to move up from the line in a way that's going to tell Derek Carr that it's probably going to be a blitz right here. I mean, you even look at Richard, he's pointing and saying, hey, DC, look at that. There's a guy who's probably going to be blitzing. Carr notices this, so he's going to walk up and tell his offensive line. See how he tells his offensive line, saying, hey, this is probably a blitz, so, hey, my halfback, make sure you block. Let's change the play a little bit. We know it's going to be man coverage now as well. It's probably going to be a cover one linebacker blitz. That's what you see on the screen. And those are the routes that the Raiders receivers are going to be running. So, okay, this is actually a pretty good situation. And that's why Derek Carr changed it to this type of play. Really, the key, and one of the guys that he was actually making sure that he told to run a certain route was, if you look right over there, this is essentially going to be a pick play. His tight end will get in the way of the defensive back who's in charge of covering Tyrell Williams' route. Williams is going to get open down there. So this is actually just a great pre-snap play by Derek Carr. He read the play correctly, knows what the play is going to be, and made the proper adjustments. But of course, you can only do so much pre-snap. You also have to make sure you play it out post-snap. But after the ball is snapped, you notice that this play is working out very well executed by the Oakland Raiders. Williams is going to get open once he finishes his route. Although because of the blitz, there is going to be a lot of one-on-one matchups, and this now means that there's actually going to be a Houston player who is winning his one-on-one matchup pretty well, meaning Carr is going to have to actually run up to the top half of the screen to make sure that this play can develop. However, Carr is able to do that. He extends the play for long enough, is able to make a very good throw, and that results in a Tyrell Williams touchdown. And that's just a play that I love because that was all just Derek Carr's mind, really. I mean, good athletic play too, sure, but what really made that play work out so well was because of what he did pre-snap. And just watching that play live, it might have just looked like a defensive back got beat very badly, but that is not what happened. Carr read the play, he knew how to adjust the play in a way that would help the Raiders, and it resulted in a touchdown. I think that for whatever reason, this is the thing we do in sports. When a player isn't like at the top of the mountain, then we say that they suck. We've seen this with Kirk Cousins as well. You hear it with some of these guys that if you're not elite, you're bad, but that's not really true. I mean, sometimes players are just good, and I think being good is fine. Having a good quarterback has a ton of value. And he's actually on a really reasonable contract too. I know at the time he was the highest paid quarterback, but that was a couple of years ago, and now a lot of things have changed. Not to mention, that contract was actually front-loaded, so he's only set to make $21 million next year, which is pretty reasonable. I mean, sure, it's not quite as great as having a guy on a rookie deal, but at the same time, with where they're drafting, I don't think they're going to get a great rookie quarterback early on because they don't have an early enough pick. So quite frankly, I would rather have the guy who I know can make smart plays. This is another smart play where what's going to happen is that those are going to be the routes that the Oakland Raiders receivers are going to be running, and at first, we know this much. We know what those Packers are doing. It's going to be a man coverage, and there is a safety who's deep. So, just knowing this, those two routes could potentially get open, I mean, both are looking like they could get open with this coverage, but the problem is going to be that we still don't know exactly what coverage Green Bay is running. I mean, there's 5 guys who could be rushing the passer, so this could just be a blitz. All 5 of them rush the passer. They could have 1 drop back in the coverage, but what they're actually going to do is have 2 drop back in the coverage, and it's only going to be a 3-man rush. So because of this, those 2 routes that could have been open now probably shouldn't be routes that Carr should look to throw to, meaning that he should instead look to the bottom half of the screen, and they do actually have a rub route going on right over there, so that's really where Carr should look to throw to. It'll be Darren Waller running towards the sideline on the bottom half of the screen. But again, I've watched this play before. I know all of this. Derek Carr does not know this. He only knows that it's going to be a cover 1 play and it's man coverage. However, the second the ball is snapped, he looks up and he notices that Green Bay player dropping back into coverage and says, okay, can't make that type of throw. That's where I initially wanted to throw the ball to. but it's not going to work on this coverage, so instead, I'm going to look to the bottom half of the screen. That's what he does. He's able to hit Waller. Honestly, you could debate that probably should have been a penalty, but it wasn't ruled a penalty, and Waller was able to make the catch. To me, it looked like an illegal pick play, but was not ruled that way, so Darren Waller is able to make the catch and get the touchdown. And quite frankly, penalty or not, that was just a great read from Carr. Again, his mental game is as high, his football IQ as high as maybe any quarterback in the league outside of like Drew Brees and Tom Brady. I mean, it's definitely up there, top 5 football IQ in my opinion. He's so good at making those reads. It's really just fun to watch, I think. And now, listen, I'm being very complimentary towards Derek Carr. He has his problems. I'm not going to try to argue against it. I'm showing the plays that to me were some of his best plays of the season. So obviously, I'm not saying that this is what he's doing on every play. One of his biggest problems is pocket presence. Some people have brought up that the reason why he struggles in pocket presence is maybe because of his injury. Of course, when he had that leg injury, it was during his MVP season or MVP candidate season. Some people are saying that he's become hesitant since then. To me, I'm not quite sure if I totally think that's it. I think that might be more of a narrative-based idea. I think he's kind of always just struggled with that. He gets the ball off a bit too quickly, is a bit too afraid to take a hit sometimes. That's a flaw. Totally. Absolutely. Like it'll be shown on this play, where what's going to happen is that, again, cover 1 man coverage play. This is a cover 1 linebacker blitz. And what's going to happen is that Hunter Renfrow is running that route right there. This is a 3rd down and 10. And after the ball is snapped, Renfrow is open. I actually wonder if he was supposed to cut a little bit later because he's still well short of the 1st down, but maybe not. Maybe they were just hoping he could break a tackle. That might be what it is. I'm not quite sure, but anyways, you look at Derek Carr, and he's kind of going to just throw this one off his back foot, and he doesn't really put his all into it. He doesn't step into it the way that usually he does. I think part of the reason why he did that is because there was pressure in front of him, and he didn't want to take a big hit. He's always been very cautious about protecting himself, sometimes a bit too much. Again, it does make sense that maybe he just says, listen, I'm not valuable if I'm not on the field, and we're going to be a lot better off with Derek Carr in the game than with Nathan Peterman in the game, so let's try to make sure I stay healthy. There is logic to that, but again, every now and then you do have to take a hit. It is a flaw in his game, not a huge one in my opinion. And also on a bit of a side note, if you watched that game against the Jets, you would just see that was the ultimate just supporting cast not helping out the quarterback game. I mean, as you see on this play, Hunter Renfrow dropped that ball. You see that there was actually 2 dropped balls on the first 2 3rd downs of the game. There was also another 3rd down that could have been a completion, great defensive play, but also a poor play by his wide receiver that resulted in then a missed field goal. It was just a mess. There was also a pick 6 in that game that was tipped up and then resulted in a pick 6. It wasn't his fault whatsoever. That's just kind of the way that game went. It totally was not his fault that they lost that game, in my opinion. But that was just a messy game. I mean, that was just bad. But I also really like his just athletic ability. He has great arm talent. His deep ball is very good. Like, on this play, right off the bat, it's pretty much almost a guarantee this is going to be a cover 4. I mean, Green Bay isn't really trying to hide it. They have 4 defensive backs who are deep. Probably cover 4, and it is going to be cover 4. And for him, he's going to say, hey, I have a tight end running that route right there. This is the route I like. For one thing, it's Darren Waller, who's a very good receiving tight end, and for the other thing, it's just a good route against this type of coverage. He starts off as though he's sort of running straight in that zone and coverage that's second closest to the top half of the screen, but then he cuts down, so this can actually work out very well. Like as you see, once the ball is snapped, Waller is just now cutting down to the bottom half of the screen, and if you look at the defensive back who's in charge of covering the zone that Waller is in, he is much closer to the top half of the screen than Waller is. So Derek Carr just flicks his wrist and gets a perfect throw down the field. Waller nearly gets into the end zone, and that's also one other thing I should have probably brought up on that last play, was that Derek Carr also just kind of has a little bit of a weird throwing motion where it almost looks like he always never throws it that hard, but it just goes very far, so he still did throw it off his back foot a little bit more so on that Jets play, but worth bringing up as well. And one other thing that I really do like about Carr is that I just feel like he always comes through in the big moments just about. I mean, there was that his MVP candidate season where he was seemingly coming back every single week. It seemed like every game was a fourth quarter comeback victory. I remember that game against the Chiefs, I believe it was 2 years ago, where, there was like 18 last plays, but he was able to get the final touchdown. Even this game against Denver, they lost this game, but this was the touchdown that gave them a chance to win it. It's going to be a man coverage, little bit unique, two guys playing zone with the man coverage, and that's going to be Hunter Renfro's route. And basically just watch this throw. It's just an absolutely perfect throw in this situation with 11 seconds left to tie the game. Just a great play by Carr. Admittedly, he then had a chance to win it. They were down 7. John Gruden decided to go for 2. They did not get it. But Carr actually made a pretty good throw on that one. It was batted down on the line, so it didn't work out. But I do feel like Carr is one of those guys that with 2 minutes left, down 4 with the game on the line, he's somebody I would want out there. Absolutely. As much as people are going to want to say, well, Derek Carr hasn't won much with the Oakland Raiders. He had that one season and that was it. However, that's a very poor argument in my opinion. I mean, at least I probably shouldn't say a poor argument, but it's one I don't agree with because his teams have not been very good whatsoever. In the past 4 seasons, if you look at DVOA, his team has had a defensive DVOA in the bottom 3 out of 3 of those 4 seasons. So in 3 out of the 4 most recent seasons, he's had a bottom 3 defense. The 4th, he had a bottom 11 defense, so not really too great there. And the best he's ever had was his first 2 seasons. They had the 15th best defense in both of those before falling off a cliff. So despite the fact that he's been playing with just atrocious defenses his entire career, he's still been able to actually have a couple of decent seasons. I mean, listen, they went 7-9 last year, despite the fact that the team was not very good whatsoever. Did not have much receiving help. The offensive line was good. I like Josh Jacobs, but that was pretty much all he had. Defense, especially the secondary, was not very good last year. I think Oakland's building something. I think they would have been better if they had Antonio Brown, but also, there's this weird thing where people are acting like his numbers aren't very good. His numbers are good too. Statistically, he's getting better every year. He was 10th in yards per attempt. He was 9th in passer rating. He had a pretty solid touchdown to interception ratio. It was 21 touchdowns to just 8 interceptions. So, 21 touchdowns is nothing to write home about. He also had 4,054 yards. So, a little bit on the lower side there, but again, he's not a volume passer. That's just not the John Gruden system. It's a very efficient system, and in that system where they try to be as efficient as possible, Carr is very efficient. And despite the fact that this was his first time ever being in a system for the second year, despite the fact that he was literally playing with an entire new group of receivers, he still had a very good season. He was statistically a top 10 quarterback last year. And you know what? I think that you don't move on from a top 10 quarterback on a reasonable salary, Call me crazy. And again, I don't know if he's actually top 10. He might be just outside the top 10, but he's top 15 for sure on a reasonable salary. You hang on to that guy. I think you're crazy to try to move on from him, especially when you have so many other holes in other places. I mean, again, not on a bad salary, so it's not like losing him is going to just give you so much more money to add it someplace else. I mean, if the Houston Texans say, we'll trade you Deshaun Watson for Derek Carr, well then sure, take that deal. But the chances are that's not going to happen, so you keep Derek Carr and hope for the best. Quite frankly, I think the reality is if the Raiders' defenses were better and they were winning football games, not a single person would be saying they should move on from Derek Carr. But that's just my opinion. I have a very strong opinion about this. But you know what? I know people are going to disagree, and that's totally cool. So let me know in the comments below. I always love a good discussion. Always love hearing from you guys. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.